Dave, it's 7. Yep.
Good evening, everybody. It is 7 o'clock. I will call this meeting of the Westfield, Washington Township Board of Zoning Appeals to order. First item of business is to note the presence of a quorum. Staff?
Ms. Fortier?
Here.
Mr. Morales?
Here.
Mr. Schmitz?
Here.
Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Bowler?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next is approval of the minutes from the September 14th meeting of BZA. We've had the opportunity to review those. Do we have any questions, comments, any need for corrections on those minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to accept the minutes that were from last month. Oh, I have to say
Second.
all that.
A motion by Mr. Bowler, seconded by Victor, to approve the minutes September 14th, 2021. Let's see. Roll call vote, please, Dane.
Ms. Fortier?
Yes.
Mr. Morales?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes,
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Bowler?
Yes.
Motion carries.
thank you. Next, review the rules and procedures. Dane?
Yes, due to the COVID-19 emergency as declared by the Governor of Indiana, the format and conduct of the meeting has been modified to comply with the executive orders regarding the conduct of public meetings, public hearings, and public gatherings. Relevant portion of the Indiana open door law have been amended or suspended during the pendency of the emergency. For the items requiring a public hearing tonight, the meeting has the following structure. The department will summarize the petition, then the petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present to the board. The president will open a public hearing. Individuals will be given 3 minutes to speak. The public hearing will be closed when all interested members of the audience have had a chance to be heard, and all emails received during the meeting have been provided to board members. The petitioner will then have a chance to respond to comments, and the board will follow with any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the petition. For the rules of conduct this evening, please do not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, we ask that you please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices at this time. If you must answer them, then please quietly exit the room. If you are attending in person and wish to speak in regard to a petition scheduled for a public hearing, please fill out a yellow card. Once your public hearing is opened by the president, then please provide us your yellow card as you approach the podium. These cards are actually up here, by the way, so you can fill them out as you approach. During your comments, please state your name and address into the microphone for the record, and we ask that you not repeat previously stated comments. Your presentation will be timed, and you'll be advised when there is approximately 30 seconds remaining. If you are not attending in person, comments regarding a petition should be emailed to planners@westfield.in.gov with the petition name or number included in the subject line. Those comments will be forwarded to the board members and the petitioner. We would like to remind everyone to please speak directly into the microphone so your comments can be put onto the record. Also, please mute your microphone when not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the benefit of the folks in the audience, there are 2 changes to the agenda tonight. So if you are here for either of these petitions, then you can hang out with us for a while or not, your choice. The item on West 216th Street, the first item you see on the screen, 603 West 216th Street, frontage variances, that's been withdrawn. And the final item on the agenda tonight, 206th Street tiny home, that matter has been continued. So it'll be heard, but it won't be heard tonight. So we are going to move forward with the other items on the agenda. And the first of which is 2109 VS 35, 3810 West 146th Street, Indy Latin School, requesting a variance of development standard to delay minimum lot landscaping requirements and buffer yard requirements on the undeveloped portion of a 30.84 acre parcel in AGSF 1. And that is Rachel.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. For the record, Rachel Remenschneider with the Community Development Department. This proposal is for the Highlands Latin School. The property is located at 3810 West 146th Street and is on approximately 30.84 acres. It is located in AGSF1 district. All adjacent properties are also in the AGSF1 district, and this is a permitted use in the district. The petitioner is requesting to delay minimum lot landscaping requirements and buffer yard requirements on the undeveloped portion of their property until a detailed development plan is filed for that land. This item is up for a public hearing tonight and has been properly noticed and advertised. Staff has received no public comments. This project was continued from the September 14th BZA meeting. Michael Thompson from Hamilton Design is here tonight to make a brief presentation. He and I are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, step right up and state your name for the public, and address for the public record.
Mike Thompson with Hamilton Designs, 11 Municipal Drive, Fishers, Indiana, 46038. First, thank you for hearing us this evening and also for the continuance last month. It was unforeseen. I apologize for that. So we're here tonight to ask for a variance of technical standards. The project is north of 146th Street, west of Shelbourne Road. We presented the primary plat to Plan Commission, and through that, several of the adjoiners attended, and we met outside like a lot of times people do. And then there was a lot of anxiety about creating a lot with an unknown use in the back. And it's adjoining a lot of properties, and the concern was they don't know what's going to get developed back there. And the reality is that we're only dividing the land due to impact fees, such as the sanitary sewer impact fee, which is done by per acre developed land, the landscaping back there, we wanted to keep it as natural as possible, and other fees like that. They understood that, but they still weren't comfortable with splitting the lot. And so we met with staff. It was very helpful. Staff said, you could not split it and then ask for a variance for the rear, and then if that gets approved, that achieves both. If you do that, we do recommend that you meet with the joiners to make sure that they are going to be on board with that. So we had a meeting on site with the adjoiners. They all came. They were completely on board with this. They want to keep that back area completely untouched. And so the request tonight is to allow the project to move forward with the landscaping requirements in the area that we're doing, along with buffering the north. Essentially right across there. There's an existing tree line, and we just connect it up there. That way we don't have to split the property and create a lot and cause anxiety for the north and the west and the east adjoiners. It's, I think, a common sense solution to what we're proposing tonight. So I don't think it's going to be injurious to the public health, safety, or morals. The value of the area adjacent, I don't think it's going to be impacted in an adversely substantial manner. I think it'll actually help keeping it natural the way it is. And, the terms of the ordinance would require us to provide buffer landscaping all the way around and go impact the tree line the whole way around. And we're asking to not have to do that. So I'm happy to answer any questions there might be or make any additional information available.
Thank you. I did have a question. The staff report, when it refers to undeveloped land, I mean, with your site plan, you're developing basically the lower 2/3 of that parcel, and then you've got the proposed development line, but there's also undeveloped real estate south of the development line that's, I'm not explaining this very well. When the proposed conditions for this refer to undeveloped land, are you referring to the land north and east of the proposed development line? In other words, the undeveloped land, 16.22 acres.
Yeah.
That's what is to remain untouched, right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
So I can explain as well why that line was chosen right there. There's a really nice tree line here that the school has an interest in keeping. It's a good buffer. The area north of the school but south of that tree line, if the school ever expands in 10 or 15 years, it would be in that area. And so we've tried to consider that. You're always thinking ahead when you design ponds and pipes and everything. And that's the area that the school thinks they might put in another building if they ever got bigger. And so there's absolutely no plans for doing anything back here, even on the horizon. And so that's why we were going to split the lot. But with the anxiety that it caused, the school was very comfortable saying anything south of here would be part of the school project and should meet all the requirements. They're just trying to leave that back
Okay.
in the way it is. Does that answer?
Yeah, because my concern was the way this reads, are you familiar with the recommended conditions that were in the staff report?
I read them.
Okay, well, just so, I'll read the section that I wanted to, that brings about this question. The first one, that the minimum lot landscaping requirements and buffer yard requirements will be in full effect when a detailed development plan is submitted for improvements in the undeveloped area shown on the overall development plan. I thought what you meant was what's it called at the top? The undeveloped land, 16.22 acres.
Yes.
That's what you, so if the undeveloped area with non-capitalized letters, not a defined term, if that was replaced with the 16.22 acre undeveloped land, that's what you mean, correct?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
That would clarify everything.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
And then the
that's what we
reverse, there's a developed land reference in number 3 that should be the reverse, which landscape requirements are in effect for the 14.21 developed land, 14.21 acre developed land as shown on the overall development plan. In other words, the landscaping and buffering is immediately in place for the
Yep.
stuff south of the line.
The 14.2.
Gotcha. Okay, I
yes,
understand.
yes. Sorry if that was
Um,
backwards.
Anybody have any other questions before we open the public hearing?
Just one last clarification, just to help iron it out for me. So you will not be splitting the lot, and you're just committing to the neighbors that that area will never be developed?
Correct.
Okay.
You're
That
committing
way-
never?
What's that?
Never?
I don't think I can
Victor
commit
just
to
said
never,
never.
Oh, sorry. I retract the never, but
Uh,
for at least the immediate time being.
Yeah, yes, and we fully intend to come back to
If it
split
ever
the
comes up.
property. That, I want that
Okay.
process to still be there so that the neighbors can feel comfortable that we would have to come back in front of the board again and notify them to split the lot, yes.
Okay, so you'd have to come back in order to split it?
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
yep.
Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing on this matter at 7:12. Do we have any cards?
We do not.
Does any of you other two people in the audience wish to speak on this matter? Okay, if not, we'll wait for any electronic communication. Mike, while we're waiting to confirm there's no further communication, I also wanted to, kind of on the same path of my questioning before, you might as well step up, you'll have to answer in the mic. The next condition was if the existing trees and vegetation on the undeveloped area substantially decreased by 5% or more of the existing acreage, buffer yard requirements shall be in effect at that time. Petitioner will have the existing tree stand surveyed. So again, you're speaking of the existing trees and vegetation that are located north and east of that line, right? Again, on that 16.22 undeveloped land, right?
Correct. It
Okay.
is fully our intent not to touch those, and if they did have to come out, then that would require us to put the trees back to the ordinance, yes.
Perfect. Okay. Any further communication?
Hey, Mike.
I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:14. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask him, how many floors is that building going to be? That's just a side question.
I believe it's 2 floors. All the drawings I've seen is 2 stories.
Okay,
There might be an attic or something like that, but everything I've seen is just 2 stories, yes.
Okay. thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
Yeah, just real quick, to again, now we got through that, clarifying what this is for, clarifying the future. If this is approved today, will then it come back to us at APC? Is that how it will go, since we still need to approve the
Staff.
land use?
Address that.
Right, so they still have an outstanding detailed development plan that they are, they've given us a first draft of it, and we gave them comments, they're still working on it, and they haven't returned that to us, I'm guessing pending all of this
Okay.
going through, so the next step would be us working with them to get that up to compliance, and then it would be on your consent agenda in the future.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious about that.
I actually had an email today from the landscape architect that we hired, who asked if she could finish the plan. I said, not quite yet. Tonight I might know, so
Okay,
that's what's outstanding. Yeah.
No, thank you. And then just comments on this. No, I think it's a great compromise and being a good neighbor. So no, I really appreciate that and your willingness to come to Westfield and want to be a good neighbor. So
Yeah,
thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification as well.
Sure, and by virtue of the neighbors not being here, I think it adds credence to what Mike's saying, that they're comfortable with it. Any other questions, comments, anything? I'll go ahead and make a motion on this since I kind of butchered this thing up. And just for the benefit of the person who's transcribing this, I'm replacing undeveloped area with 16.22 acre undeveloped land, and then developed area with 14.21 acre developed land. Okay, so the way the motion would read is I'll make a motion to approve 2109 VS 35, subject to the following four conditions: that the minimum lot landscaping requirements and buffer yard requirements will be in full effect when a detailed development plan is submitted for improvements in the 16.22 acre undeveloped land as shown on the overall development plan, Exhibit 3. Number two, that if the existing trees and vegetation on the 16.22 acre undeveloped land are substantially decreased by 5% or more of the existing acreage, buffer yard requirements should be in effect at that time. Petitioners will have existing tree stands surveyed and will show acreage on the landscape plan before an improvement location permit is issued. Number three, that all landscaping requirements are in effect for the 14.21 acre developed land as shown on the overall development plan, Exhibit 3. And finally, that the petitioner should record acknowledgement of this approval with the Hamilton County Recorder's Office and return a copy of the recorded instrument to the Community Development Department.
I'll second.
Motion by myself, seconded by Victor to approve this matter, 2109 VS 35, subject to the stated conditions. Dan, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Morales?
Yes.
Mr. Bowler?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Ms. Fortier?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And I will make a motion to adopt staff findings of fact for the approval of this petition.
I'll second.
Motion by myself, seconded by Ms. Fortier, to adopt staff's findings of fact for the approval of 2109 VS 35. Dan, can you call the roll?
Mr. Morales?
Yes.
Mr. Bowler?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Ms. Fortier?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. You're approved. Thank you, Mike. Next item on the agenda is 15431 Spring Winds Drive. Leah Alexander is the petitioner. Item number 2110 VS 37. Petitioner seeking a variance of development standard to encroach 3 feet into the 30-foot rear yard setback of the underlying zoning district of SF2 in Maple Ridge PUD. Caleb.
Thank you, President. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. The subject property is .34 acres in size and is located at 15431 Spring Winds Drive. The property is zoned the Maple Ridge PUD District, and all adjacent properties are also zoned the Maple Ridge PUD District. As mentioned, the petitioner is requesting a variance of development standard to encroach 3 feet into the 30-foot rear yard setback of the underlying zoning district in the Maple Ridge PUD. This item has been properly noticed and advertised, and we have received one public comment this morning, so I will pass that out now.
And just to let you know, the public comment we received was received by us in the state that you are receiving it tonight. So this is as good as we have.
Yeah, it was emailed over with a picture of this. So it was printed, it was a printed picture that we received an email from. So the handwriting's the best that we received as well. But I can read off the public comment if that's okay, if you
Sure.
can't interpret it, so. So the public comment reads, "Hello, I am writing on behalf of myself." Looks like Barbara David. The name is cut off, but RAST. We have no objection to the 3-foot issue for Adam and Leah Alexander, 15431 Spring Winds, 460 zip code. Our neighbor Maria and Mike Daleman also, no dispute with this, and assigned Barbara Risto. The phone number for Barbara and the Daleman's phone number, it looks like, is listed as well. So just for clarification on the location map, I believe that their property, the Barbara Risto, the one who wrote this card, their property is located, if you see the highlighted property, if you go 2 to the west, and then 2 or 1 to the south, so where the cursor is right now, that is her property, and then the neighbors that she's referring to is 2 properties from there. So those are the
Okay.
2 located neighbors. So Adam Alexander is virtually attending right now. He does plan on making a brief presentation. Otherwise, we have received no other public comments. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Caleb. Mr. Alexander, are you with us?
I am.
The floor
Adam
is
Alexander.
yours.
Adam Alexander, 15431 Spring Winds Drive, Carmel, Indiana, 46033. As Caleb said, we're looking for 3 feet of use into that 30-foot rear yard setback to install a swimming pool. We do have room for the pool without it. It just would be very tight to the home. The 3 feet just gives us extra space to be able to essentially walk between the porch that you can see in the small drawing there. Without the 3 feet, we'd have about 2 feet between that porch and the water, which one, small safety concern there with children walking between there, and then 2, just ample space for anybody to walk through there comfortably. Any questions?
Yeah, check with any questions from the board for the petitioner?
I have a question. This is a new subdivision, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so there's not an HOA yet that's been established.
Well, there is an HOA. It is new, but it's been, I'd say, 4 to 5 years in the making. So there's still undeveloped land. Every lot, I believe, adjoining is sold, and the owners have been notified via the public notice that was sent out. But yeah, there is an HOA involved.
Sometimes we have HOA approval letters. I don't know if you have a process. That's not really within the scope of what we do, but we didn't have one. I don't know if that's what brings about the question. Yeah, so you may have that process to deal with. That's your business. That doesn't really concern us. It looks
Yeah,
like,
I am aware.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I am aware of that. Until I have a plan of what's actually going to go there, I didn't submit anything
Sure.
to them yet. They're
fine.
aware that we're working on something.
That's fine. It looks like you've got a pretty gentle slope from your lot going down to the pond. So you've
It's
actually,
pretty flat, yeah.
visually, you've got quite a bit of ground even behind your lot before, that's common area. So that helps a little bit visually for the
Oh,
impact of it. Any other questions before we open the public hearing? Okay, I will open the public hearing at 7:25. Beyond what Caleb read, for the record, do we have any other cards or communication?
We do not.
Okay, we'll give it a minute or so. Anything coming in? Thank you. I'll close the public hearing at 7:26. And Adam, I'd have one other question. The staff has given us a couple of recommended conditions, the second of which is a standard condition that we would typically have. The first is that the pool be installed in substantial compliance with Exhibit 3, which is your plan. You mentioned that you didn't have a plan locked in, but the way this is probably going to be considered by this board is it's subject to being in compliance with that plan. So if you do vary for that, keep in mind that this variance is tied to this plan. So is that acceptable to you?
Yeah, and the only reason I don't have a plan for the HOA is just their plan includes landscaping and everything.
Gotcha.
And then just in lieu of, not wasting my time and, creating a plan and then denied this variance, then I have to do the whole plan all over again for them. So just waiting for the variance, and then the
Okay.
pool is set
I just want to make sure you
properly.
understood the impact of what that condition would mean. So, okay, great. Any other questions or comments? Or I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to accept, to approve 2110-VS-37 15431 Spring Winds Drive with the following recommended conditions of approval. One, that the pool be installed in substantial compliance with Exhibit 3, and two, that the petitioner shall record an acknowledgement of this approval with the Hamilton County Recorder's Office and return a copy of the recorded instrument to the Community Development Department.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bowler, seconded by Mr. Ferguson to approve 2110 VS 37, subject to these two stated conditions in the staff report. Dan, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bowler,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
Ms. Fortier,
Yes.
Mr. Morales.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, and I'll make a motion to adopt staff's findings of fact for the approval of this petition.
And I will second.
Motion by myself, seconded by Ms. Fortier to adopt staff's findings of fact for the approval of this petition. Dan, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bowler,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
Ms. Fortier,
Yes.
Mr. Morales.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And thank you, Adam, your matter's approved. Good luck.
Thank you.
For the next item, Mr. Schmitz, I just wanted to make you aware that the 2110 docket, there are two docket numbers shown on the agenda this evening. The next item is 2110 VS 38, not 2109 VS 34. There are two dockets shown, at least on the uploaded version.
Yeah, everything I see here is 30.
Oh, it's 30.
Yes, this next item is 2110 VS 38 on the.
38 is correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the uploaded agenda, it's got a 2109 VS 34 up there. I don't know why.
Okay. 2110, next item on the agenda, 2110 VS 38, 220 East 206th Street.
Yeah, it's-
Chris Chrysler is the petitioner. requesting 3 variances of development standard. First, to encroach 10 feet into the 20-foot minimum front yard setback on the south line, to permit an accessory building within 75 feet of the right-of-way. And third, to permit an accessory building within an established front yard. And that is Dane.
And before I begin, I just want to make sure that either the petitioner, Chris Preisler, or the representative, Bob Abbott, is here this evening. Bob? Okay. Okay. Good evening, members of the board. For the record, Dane Crabtree with the Community Development Department. The items before you this evening are variances of development standard request for 220 East 206th Street in the unincorporated town of Hortonville. The property is zoned SF5, single-family, very high-density villages. The petitioner requests 3 variances of standard. 1, to encroach 10 feet into the 20-foot minimum front yard setback. 2, to permit an accessory building within 75 feet of a right-of-way. And 3, to permit an accessory building in the front yard. The petitioner wishes to remove an existing lean-to shed on the property, which we have no permit for and existed prior to the petitioner owning the property, with an attached garage. Based on historic aerials, the home was built prior to 1941, and the established front yard varies from as little as 5 feet on the western side of the property to 23 feet elsewhere. This item is scheduled for a public hearing this evening. The department has received 1 public comment, which was given to you at the beginning of the meeting. Bob Abbott, on behalf of Chris Preisler, is here. Would you like to make a presentation or just for questions? Sure. Bob Abbott then will approach the desk and make a brief presentation, after which he will be available for questions, as will I if there are questions of staff.
Thank you, Dane. Bob, floor is yours.
Bob Abbott. My address is 11585 East 241st Street, Cicero, Indiana. Happy to be here tonight. First time I've been to a hearing for Westfield. The project that I was asked to develop for Mr. Preisler was he wanted to remove the building that you see there at the very front of the property. As I measured it, it's probably less than 2 feet from the front yard. And it was kind of a crude type building. And the Preislers just purchased this property recently within the month and wanted to remove that and build a new 2-car garage on the property, and it was to be also connected to the house via a breezeway. So it's not a detached garage anymore, but an attached garage. It's going to have a design that would be complementary to the house. The house, I think, has been remodeled in the past few years, and this garage will have the hardy plank siding and painted to match the house, with a roof similar to the house. The garage would have a 612 pitch roof, which would be more in line with what the house looks like also. The practical difficulties in putting a garage there was that moving it back further from the front line put us right into the root system of a mature tree that they didn't want to lose. I looked around how far the tree branches go out, and that's usually how far the root system is also. And so we picked a spot at about 10 foot in front of the property, which also allows us to directly connect the garage with a enclosed breezeway to the house. If we would have moved it even further back adjacent to the east side of the house, I discovered that's where the septic system is coming out of the house. And so that wasn't very acceptable either. So Any questions for what we're trying to do? We've tried to, after several different proposals, we tried to come up with something that would be as close as possible to what the desire is of the board and for the zoning for that area.
Any questions for the petitioner at this point before I open up the public hearing? Okay, I will open up the public hearing at 7:35. And we do have a written comment on this. Has this been shared with the petitioner? Do you know, Dane?
Yeah, this is the one, I sent this over to Chris, Mr. Preisler and Bob. I don't know if you had a
Okay.
chance to read it, but yeah.
Okay,
What's the name of the person? I don't know if I received that.
Will Fong.
Okay.
We'll see what else we have.
I had somebody call me directly, that's why I was asking.
Okay.
And
We'll go ahead and, I've opened the public hearing, so if this gentleman is here to speak on this, or if we have anything electronic, we'll list them, then you'll have an opportunity to
Okay,
respond.
should I sit down?
Sure, that'd be
Okay.
fine. I did open it, didn't I? Okay. Do we have any cards? And are you here to speak, sir, on this matter or a different one?
No, I just
Or just hanging
hear
out?
about it,
Okay,
because I've heard rumors about them expanding 206th Street, taking up the area,
okay, well,
developing into the housing.
yeah, we won't have anything to do with that. This
Because
body
my
won't.
house is over on where his property is, my house is just on the south side of that road, south side of the main road.
Of 206th?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's outside the scope of what we're dealing with. We're just
Okay.
dealing with what the
I
petitioner
was
is
curious
seeking.
about what's going on here.
Okay, no, great. We're hurting for an audience, so you're in for it tonight.
I know I'm not pretty, but at least I'm here.
I have one question for staff on that. The right-of-way is kind of weird there. That segment that's north-south is right-of-way, correct?
Yes, this is
what's-
called Jack Street.
Called what?
Jack Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's what's triggering,
That is triggering, this lot is not part of the original Hortonville plat, and therefore it has never been subdivided, and therefore it has to be 70, and this is an accessory building, so that's why it has to be 75 feet from a right-of-way, which clearly is right up abutting this property, and then it is in the front yard, and then it is requested to encroach 10 feet into the 20-foot minimum front yard. Yeah.
because if
but
that
yeah.
was, most of the time we see stuff like this, that's a part of the bigger, the 118 parcel. And then this guy would have easement rights to get to it, in which case we wouldn't have the issue with the setback at least,
Yeah, well, and
but he
typically
wouldn't have frontage.
in a lot that has been subdivided, accessory buildings are not permitted in the front yard, and by default are almost always 75 feet away from a right-of-way anyway. So,
Okay. Sir, did you want to speak on this petition? Okay. Thank you. Okay, no other communication received? Okay, I will close the public hearing at 7:38. Questions from the board, questions, comments?
I just have a question. It's not really related to zoning, I don't think, but it's just from my own personal curiosity of how the neighborhood is. How old is this house? And is there farmland there? It looks like there's rows and rows of something. So I was just curious what the content of this lot was.
I don't know if Mr. Abbott has any more info on it. This house does show up in our oldest aerial from 1941, so it is at least pre-1941. I can't attest to the tilling of the land.
I think it's just mowed into a lawn.
Thank you.
It sounds like they've got some practical difficulties here that the one item of public hearing, oh, I didn't give you a opportunity to respond to the public hearing. The Wolfong comment is the only one I guess we have, who said he opposed, do not allow more buildings closer than the norm of 20 feet. Why? This is 0.74 acres, plenty of room to build their building and keep it from the front south of the property. Norms are set up for a reason and so forth. Did you have an opportunity to see that earlier?
Yeah, I did see it. No,
Step up, and if you had any comments as to that, then we'll consider those or like to hear.
Well, of course, we're sensitive to not wanting to anger any neighbors unnecessarily at all. When I first approached this property, the address is 206th Street. So I was trying to figure out, how is this house on 206th Street? And where that old garage is kind of in a convenient place to put a garage to get an automobile in without having to drive all the way over that grassy area. But I understood, I was a little bit at loss. I built a lot of garages, and I had never run into a property quite laid out like this one was. And so the only thing we knew to do is I said, definitely, I think we're gonna have to move it back. And yet still maybe be able to move it back to the north and back also to the east. And so that there is some driveway to park in front of it. Right now, when you pull in, the way that was laid out originally, there's hardly any room to even pull in and park, even in front of that building. So we wanted to move it back both directions so that there's parking area. Typically, detached structures are not allowed in front of just about anywhere where I build in Indianapolis, all over Hamilton County, Marion County, unless it's attached. And so I understood the need to attach it to the house so that it's actually a part of the house structure, not just an accessory structure sitting out there by itself. So we've tried to make it conform as much as possible without having to take down a tree and yet make it look like it's part of the house and property in a good way.
Thank you, and is that roadway, that Jack Street or whatever we call it, is that gravel as well? Or paved, or, I mean, does it look like it is paved?
It's not paved. I know it's not paved from where it starts to make that curve around in front of the house. Then it's gravel all the way back.
I just kind of wonder, if it appears like a driveway, like a private driveway, or does it appear like a public road? At least visually, it seems like it would, because to me, it kind of mitigates the whole effect of having, I get that it's 10 feet off the front yard setback, but I'm not sure that the person that wrote this letter thought it was 10 or 20 feet, 10 feet versus 20 feet off 206th Street. It's not. It's way the heck farther back.
There's not a stop sign at the end of that road, correct, before you get on to 206?
No, not that I remember.
Yeah.
There's also there is also a grove of trees along that property line that the garage would actually be setting back in, kind of like in behind the trees that separate the two properties.
So the existing structure is right on the line,
It's
correct?
within a foot. It was hard to know exactly where the property line was, but I tried my best to measure where it looked like it was in terms of measurements. But from that picture, you can see, depending on the thickness of the yellow line, it looks like it's right smack on the garage that's there now, which has already been partially removed.
Do you know if the petitioner has a survey at all?
Well, I have no, I do not know if he has one. I had to create this one from the legal description and measuring off of different sources, including GIS mapping and then visual views of where that road comes in and bends and turns.
Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns?
I do have a comment in regards to the Wilfong letter. They note several properties in that area, but I don't see anything exactly for this property. And so as I appreciate this letter, Hortonville is a beautiful little town, and I do want to keep it that way. And I agree that it's like, you know, don't mess it up. Make it look good. But to me, looking at this, to remove that older building is going to be an improvement when you put that new garage on. So that's just my input and comment from that.
Anyone else?
Visually, looking at that picture, that existing garage was about 18 feet wide. And so we're going to be like within about 8 feet of the edge of that old existing garage before it starts. And probably about 6 or 7 feet further to the east of that garage.
Okay.
So it makes a little longer a driveway approach to that for there to be more parking off that easement. If you look at the house itself, it doesn't look it looks like less than 10 feet itself from the easement. And when you're out there, it's hard to know that because you can see lawn extending all the way out to the drive, which may be not technically their property itself. So we're trying to conform to the best that we can.
Okay. All right. Let's see, do we have- And I'll repeat, Bob, what I did for the prior petitioner. The recommended conditions that the staff has provided us include the middle item there that you see in the bullet point list, that the variance will be developed, the property of the variance be developed in substantial compliance with the site plan. So that to the extent you have any changes, then it would not be permitted by any approval that would be subject to these conditions. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 2110-VS-38, 220 East 206th Street, with the recommended conditions that the variance of development standard to encroach 10 feet into the 20-foot front yard setback shall be applicable only for the garage accessory structure described in the petitioner proposed findings of fact, see Exhibit 4. The property of the variance shall be developed in substantial compliance with the site plan, see Exhibit 3. And the petitioner shall record an acknowledgement of this approval with the Hamilton County Recorder's Office and return a copy of the recorded instrument to the Economic and Community Development Department.
And I will second.
Okay. Motion by Mr. McCarty, second by Ms. Fortier to approve 2110 VS 38, subject to the 3 staff recommended conditions. Dan, can you call the roll?
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
Ms. Fortier,
Yes.
Mr. Morales,
Yes.
Mr. Bowler.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And I'll make a motion to adopt staff's findings of fact for the approval of 2110 VS 38.
I'll second that.
Motion by myself, seconded by Mr. Bowler to adopt staff's findings of fact for the approval of 2110 VS 38. Dane, can you call the roll?
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
Ms. Fortier,
Yes.
Mr. Morales,
Yes.
Mr. Bowler.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Matters approved. Final matter for consideration tonight is 2110 VU 04, 228 Maple Street. Bailey Speak is the petitioner seeking a variance of use to allow a low-intensity retail use, a beauty salon at 228 Maple Street, zoned MF1 multifamily low density. And that is Mr. Crabtree.
Good evening, members of the board. For the record, Dane Crabtree with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is a variance of use request for 228 Maple Street. Currently zoned multifamily low density, the petitioner is seeking to permit a low-intensity retail use, specifically a beauty salon, on .18 acres. Property is located in the Grand Junction district of the Grand Junction Subdistrict Addendum of the Comprehensive Plan, and a letter from the Grand Junction Task Group has been supplied as an exhibit this evening. This item has been properly noticed and advertised. The department has received no comments. Bailey Speak, the petitioner, is virtually present this evening. She does not plan to make a presentation, but is available for questions if you have them. If the board is inclined to approve the variance, staff does recommend a 5-year moratorium on the variance to expire December 31st, 2026. If you have any questions, Bailey should be virtual, and I am available if you have questions of staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Bailey, can you hear us?
I can.
Great, thanks. Did you have anything that you wanted to say in support of the petition at this point, or should we just move forward?
Yeah, exactly what Dane said is our plan. So we want to use the location as a beauty salon, and with that, we plan to update the interior and the exterior of the property. But if you guys have any questions, just let me know.
Bailey, I'm curious, are you going to leave your downtown location that you already currently have?
Yeah, we'll be moving spaces.
Okay.
You're right at the corner of 31 and 32, right right next to the wine vault?
That's correct.
Okay. And you mentioned that you're planning exterior changes to the building, and you are aware that at least staff's recommended conditions is a 5-year moratorium or a 5-year term essentially for this approval. So sometimes that conflicts with, if it's a temporary nature like that, it conflicts with at least significant improvements to the property. But you're aware of that recommended condition that staff has presented?
Yeah, we're aware of the risk and still would like to proceed.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing, 7:52. Do we have any cards? No cards and no communications, so we'll give it a minute or so, and then we'll close the public hearing and may have some questions from the board. Any communication?
We do not have any electronic communication.
I will close the public hearing at 7:53. Members of the board, do we have any questions for the petitioner or staff?
I have a question as to why the 5-year expiration.
Sure. So historically, many of the properties in this general area, just similar to Jersey Street, one fairly recently in the past couple meetings, I don't recall if it was last meeting or one before, 5-year moratorium, term limit, what have you, is requested because this general area is ripe and likely to have redevelopment occur there. And if a variance were to be granted, it runs in perpetuity with the land, and therefore it could make redevelopment of this area, it could hinder that if the variance were to continue. If the property were to be owned by someone and they, say, are a holdout, which they would have the right to do that if they so chose, if this business were in that realm and they held it, they could potentially hold out for it, whereas a variance, if it ends after 5 years, and this is zoned multifamily, it reverts back to only being able to be used for that multifamily use. The likelihood of that hindering the redevelopment, considering it's a single-family home with a multifamily zoning, is much less likely. So in the event that this area doesn't have a redevelopment proposal in 5 years, it's possible that Ms. Speak could come back and another extension might be granted because it makes sense, but we don't know that yet.
And then there'd be nothing that would stop the landowner to working with the, in this case, tenant petitioner and work something out to where it becomes available for development sooner.
Certainly, in the interim, if Ms. Speak or whomever is the property owner, they could potentially still sell the property in the interim if they so choose,
Right.
chose.
And we did do it at the last meeting with something splendid
That
on,
was the same
on
time
Mill
frame on
Street.
the one next to Melody there on,
Yeah, the 5-year.
okay.
That's the gift box,
Yes,
one on Mill Street, yes.
yes.
I have one question. In the Grand Junction Task Group's letter, they mentioned that they had a question about the parking, and had that question been answered successfully?
Well, so if you, Rachel, you want to pull that up? There is, as you may know, on-street parking on Park Street right now for all the restaurants further down. There is also a parking lot just to the northwest of this that is available for public parking where the old Hardee's used to be. It is currently owned, not by the city, but it is allowing for public parking right there. So being that close certainly would not hinder this.
And even in the comp plan, isn't the idea to not worry about it and parking, anticipating street parking and other stuff at these downtown properties anyway?
Yeah, I mean, the local business historic district doesn't have parking standards anyway, and generally speaking, in the downtown urban, suburban core, what have you, it's expected that that development will be more dense and walkable, and eventually that there will be more improvements for parking structures that will help to alleviate that.
I just had a general question and curiosity. How many beauticians would you be having at the salon?
So we would have, so we're actually microbladers. So we do the eyebrow tattoos. So we'll have 3 eyebrow techs, and then we will have 2 private rooms inside the home as well that we would be booth renting out to either like an esthetician or a lash artist, some other service.
Okay.
So there would be 5 of us.
Okay, thank you.
Hmm.
Well, sorry, I guess that feeds back into the previous question. Would y'all be parking on the street, in the driveway, or utilizing the public parking to the northwest?
We'd utilize the driveway and the public parking and leave street parking for clients.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there's any other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion on this petition.
I'll go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve 2110 VU 04 228 Maple Street. That includes the recommended conditions of approval, that the approval of low-intensity retail be limited to a beauty salon, and 2, that the approval of this variance shall expire on December 31st, 2026. Any request to extend the time limit of this variance shall be reviewed and approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals prior to December 31st, 2026.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Fortier, seconded by Mr. McCarty to approve 2110 VU 04, subject to the 2 staff conditions contained in the staff report. Dane, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Ms. Fortier?
Yes?
Mr. Morales?
Yes.
Mr. Bowler?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, and I'll make a motion to adopt staff's findings of fact for the approval of 2110 VU 04.
I second that.
Motion by myself, seconded by Mr. Bowler to adopt staff's findings of fact for the approval of 2110 VU 04. Dane, can you call the roll?
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Ms. Fortier?
Yes.
Mr. Morales?
Yes.
Mr. Buller?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmitz?
Yes. Thank you, Bailey. Your petition's approved.
Thank you.
That concludes our business for tonight. And let's see. Plan Commission Liaison, Victor.
Oh, boy. All right. We had a busy meeting last week, to say the least. On our consent agenda, we had Prime Car Wash that's going to, and I just found that out at that meeting, they're going to basically be splitting the property with Star Bank there between Portillo's and Chick-fil-A, so dividing that up and putting in Prime Car Wash. There was something regarding North Point 3, a new Culver's coming in at Bridgewater. And item of business was Urban Apples, which we were going to vote on that, but they continued it to our next meeting, hopefully this coming Monday. They had a few extra things to tighten up. And then public hearings, we had Orchard View, just the ODP and primary plat, that was approved. We also heard Hiddle at 31 for a new Holiday Inn Express. And at Midland South, an amendment for townhomes at Roosevelt and Cherry. That was sent on to council, and they approved that last night. So I think that is all.
Great, thank you. Community Development Department.
No news beyond, until we hear otherwise. The tiny home variance will be back along with a handful of other variances for next month, so we will be meeting.
Definitely have a meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. And I will make a motion to adjourn at 8:02.
I have a second.
Motion by myself, seconded by Ms. Fortier to adjourn this meeting. And do we need to roll call that? I forget.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I put my stuff away, so I'll wing it. Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Morales?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Fortier?
Yes.
Mr. Bowler?
Yes.
We're adjourned.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Too excited.